I would like to introduce our final speaker. It's Mr. Jonathan Parfrey. I first met Jonathan when Sustainable Works joined LARC. LARC is the Los Angeles Regional Collaborative for Climate Action and Sustainability. Jonathan is a board member of LARC. Jonathan has a really impressive bio, and so I won't go through the whole thing because I want to actually give him time to speak. Jonathan is the executive director of Climate Resolve, and Climate Resolve's mission is to make Southern California more livable and prosperous for today and for the future by inspiring people at home, work, and in the government to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for climate adaptation. From 2008 to 2013, Jonathan served as a commissioner at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. He currently serves on many boards in addition to LARC. He's on the Los Angeles League of Conservation Voters, Ciclavia, Move LA, and the Alliance of Regional Collaboratives for Climate Adaptation. From 2007 to 2011, Jonathan serves as the director of the Green LA Coalition and Physicians for Social Responsibility. In 2003, Jonathan was appointed to Governor Schwarzenegger's environmental policy team. And in 2010, Jonathan received a Stanton Fellowship, and in 2011, he was a senior fellow at the USC Marshall School of Business. And there's a lot more that he's done, but I'm going to bring to the stage Mr. Jonathan Parfrey.
Good morning. I notice there's some folks standing in the back, and there are seats available if you want to come on up. Hello. And you're welcome to come on in if you want. There's seats available. So I'm hoping I'm going to share some new information with you, stuff that you may not know. So let me start at the very beginning with what makes LA kind of exceptional when it comes to climate change. I'm going to throw a few ideas out at you. Maybe you didn't know this. By the way, Senator Fran Pavley is an Angelino, and she was being very coy about her accomplishments. AB 32, which she had championed, she pushed that across the finish line. That was her bill, has changed the planet on how we're approaching climate change. And we just had her in our midst. Unequivocally, she is a climate hero. Another Angelino, and there was a slide of her up in Fran's slideshow of Mary Nichols. Mary Nichols is the person who is leading California's implementation of AB 32 at the Air Board. It is the precursor of not only the United States, but many other nations' actions on climate change. So just to let you know that that's amazing. We have an office here in Los Angeles of the Bloomberg and Clinton Climate Initiative, C40. They're right here in LA. They have an office. They brought people from around the country to be in Los Angeles as one of its key offices. R20, which is, Laura's here, is Mr. Schwarzenegger, helped get that launched to implement climate actions regionally in different parts of the world. They have an office here. The Climate Action Reserve is where there is the carbon offsets are being coordinated in the United States out of Los Angeles. The Waxman-Markey legislation in Congress, Henry Waxman, an Angelino. Out of UCLA and the Jet Propulsion Lab, two of the most key centers for climate science. Dr. Alex Hall, I'll be talking about his studies in a little while. Dr. Hall is the lead author of the IPCC chapter on regional climate change, the actual looking at cities and how climate affects cities. And did you know this? The most efficient solar cell that we know of in the known universe is produced in the city of Los Angeles by Boeing in the San Fernando Valley, and then that is the solar cell that's used on the space launches. And we have the most photographed solar panels in the world on top of the Staples Center. When the Goodyear blimp goes by and they say, you know, Kobe Bryant's getting ready for the game, they're looking at that is the most photographed solar panels in the world right here in LA. The most persuasive a movie on climate change was made in Los Angeles, Inconvenient Truth, in Culver City. And here's the most important thing. LA is kind of the analog for the developing world. We're not the New York, where it's incredibly dense with skyscrapers and everyone's jammed in together in this concrete area. Instead, what we have is density together with sprawl. When my friends in City Hall go out and they go to the rest of the world, everyone says, so, yeah, we know about New York. Yeah, Chicago's interesting. Yeah, London's okay. What's going on in LA? They really want to know, because what happens in LA will be influential in these other new capitals across the world. As the world is urbanizing, LA becomes the model. So what we do here is incredibly important. Well, I hope you feel like now you have influence, because what you do at this organization in the West Side can be very influential. Look at our city. I mean, is that the great picture postcard that you see, you know, of you can surf in the morning and you can ski in the afternoon? What a beautiful city. And that's the thing I want to bring home, is people are talking about climate change internationally. And I think it's important to talk about our own tuchus. Let's talk about what this means to us specifically. Our Mediterranean climate, our cool summers, our warm winters make LA one of the most desirable places to live on Earth. And it's our climate. And that's the number 1 reason why people come to this amazing place, to experience our climate, our beautiful land of Southern California. I had to put the Dodgers, I'm sorry. I'm in mourning myself. But this area is so beautiful, and Angelino Heights, the new hottest neighborhood in Los Angeles, just to let you know. And Ciclavia, I'm one of the founders of Ciclavia, so I love Ciclavia. And I think it has transformed our city to some extent. But the last great train station built in the United States. We live in this beautiful area, and we are the envy of the world. And I don't want to talk about whether climate change is true or not. Instead, let's look at climate change from the perspective of our home. Just our home. Protecting our home. And what does it mean to really rise up to be, forgive the word, a patriot, to be a climate hawk, to defend ourselves? How are we going to defend ourselves from climate change? Now, there have been studies done on climate change and popular opinion. They're being done out of George Mason and out of Yale. There's wonderful people working on this. And the PPIC, Public Policy Institute of California, has also done some great polling. Essentially, let me give you the thumbnail sketch. About 1/3 of the country are good liberals like us. The Sierra Club says it, they believe it, the end, done. About 1/3 of the country. They care about the environment, and they're on our side. We could go out, and if we really work hard to work our base, we can get 1/3 of the country to totally support what we're doing. That's good. We can't forget them. They're our choir. Occasionally we have to, sing out of the hymnal to our choir. It's a good thing. Then there's about 20% who are the exact opposite. The Sierra Club says it, I don't believe it. They're the climate denialists, and they are out there. And then there's about 10% of the public that's just completely checked out. Sorry, they're just not plugged in at all. And then there's that 30 to 40% in the middle, the rest of them. They're worried about the paycheck. They're worried about their job. They're worried about their kids getting a good education. They're worried about getting their kids to school and getting home and making ends meet and getting dinner on the table. They are not thinking about climate change. Those are the people we need. How do we talk to that middle 30%? Now, when we're looking at climate change right now, and a lot of people go here and they just talk about the consensus of all the different climate societies. And I love the way that Bill presented the climate science. Thank you, that was wonderful. And and I love the fact that he showed a textbook. He just opened up a textbook and he just, took the photos out of the textbook because that's what it is. There is no controversy about this. Do you know that there's greater controversy among scientists about whether smoking gives you cancer than about whether climate change is human related? So, let's talk about the downscales though. Let's talk about LA. And this is the work that Professor Alex Hall out of UCLA has performed. Now, in the past, you've probably heard studies that give guesstimates about what the future temperatures will be. But let me talk a little bit about his methodology. His methodology, this is a typical global climate model. Look at how indistinct things are. That the cells where they look at the climate impacts are 100 to 200 kilometers across. At 200 kilometers across, that puts Santa Monica in the same cell as Lancaster. There's a slightly different climate between Santa Monica and Lancaster. Not only a physical climate, but a political climate, if I may opine. So then, the topology of our area, we know that when we're in Santa Monica sometimes, and then we have to drive to the valley, there could be like a 20-degree difference, right? So we already know this, and what do the climate scientists say about these microclimates within Southern California? And so Dr. Hall downscaled 25 climate studies, global climate models. He downscaled these global climate models that had been trued, as Bill pointed out, by looking at how the past climate is. And what they looked at is then the ensemble mean across all of these different studies. And so looking at this, what we were able to do in our organization is to help Dr. Hall get this information out to the public. And what are the big takeaways? That in the mid-century epoch, between 2041 and 2060, this is looking again at the ensemble mean over 25 global climate models. We're looking at about 3 times the number of extreme heat days. And in the valleys, about 4 times the number, and in the mountains and the deserts, around 5.5 times. Now, for an extreme heat day, that's 95 degrees. So we're looking at a very different experience of temperature in Southern California. As you heard from Senator Pavley, this affects public health, this affects air quality, food supply, energy demand, very important, and even energy supply too. Water evaporation, when it's warmer, there's more evaporation. It affects vegetation, the plants become drier. It can affect habitat that depends on those plants and the water supply for those plants. Wildfires, I'll get into that in a minute, are anticipated to increase because of this added heat. And there are the indirect effects, such as property values, such as the interior of the United States is going to be even warmer than the Southern California effects. So there could be people moving to Southern California to be in a more temperate climate. It affects the roads and the rails. And just looking at the air quality question, that added heat converts the nitrogen dioxide into ozone. And it does so in a way that the NOx becomes the ozone and can affect our health. So we're looking at the urban heat island effect, and this is on top of the other effects. So on the urban heat island effect, we are looking at somewhere between 3 to about 23 degrees Fahrenheit, where the urban heat island effect adds to the temperature inside a building. This is inside a building. It can be even more outside a building. And so in Los Angeles, if you think of the land mass of the city, about 40% of our land mass is asphalt. Streets, playgrounds, parking lots. And then about 20% of our land mass are rooftops. And so you heard from Bill about the solar radiation coming down. We have we have changed Southern California's vegetation to such a degree that, and soil, that we actually are absorbing now 60%. Our landmass are 60% of that solar radiation that would have in other ways been diffused. So, there are ways of dealing with this, and I will be getting into what we can do specifically about that in the near future. Now, related to rain and snow in Los Angeles, I want to provide some context for you, and this is really important. You just can't talk about precipitation and just stop right there, because when it comes to precipitation, we really rely on what we import into Southern California. So the city of Los Angeles imports 89% of our water. There's kind of a joke in the water world where if there's a drop of rain in the western United States, somehow it makes its way into Los Angeles. But if there's a drop of rain in Los Angeles, we put it out into a sewer and send it out into the ocean as quickly as possible. So this is the Cascades, built by William Mulholland 100 years ago. We're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Los Angeles Aqueduct. And if you have you ever wondered why LA has this kind of like crazy shape of it goes down to the port and then there are all these like little neighborhoods attached to it out in the valley? It's because all of those independent cities opted to become part of the city of LA to take advantage of this water in the LA Aqueduct back, about 100 years ago. And if it were not for William Mulholland's engineering feat, there would be no great city of Los Angeles. It would still be a very small city. The city could only support around 400,000 people, where today we support around 4 million. And so here's the California Aqueduct as it comes into Southern California. And here is the Colorado Aqueduct. And so here's the intake up in the Owens Valley. This is where the water first comes into the LA Aqueduct. It's an absolutely beautiful area. DWP hired a company, Tetra Tech, to perform a study. And their study looked at future water supply for the city. And they were predicting that there would be about a 5% decrease in the available water by mid-century and 10% by the end of century from the traditional sources that feed the LA Aqueduct. That's a lot. That's a lot. The California Department of Water Resources, looking at the California Aqueduct, are predicting somewhere between a 2 to 7% decrease in water available for the California Aqueduct and 7 to 9% by the end of the century. And when it comes to this is the California snowpack, you can see there's the historical average on the left, and then looking forward where there are predictions of a tremendous decrease in snowpack. Now, and then again, the projected snow water equivalent for the Rocky Mountains, where we do get some of our water, it comes in through the Colorado River. As you can see, increasingly, the precipitation that will happen will come down as rain rather than as snowpack. And why is this important? Because that means that earlier in the year, we're going to see much higher runoffs. So we currently have an infrastructure that's geared to a certain climate, where the Sierra Nevadas are sort of a reservoir that holds the snow. About 20% of our water supply is held in the Sierra Nevadas, and now we're going to see that reservoir change dramatically. And so we could see very high runoffs earlier in the year where we simply don't have the infrastructure to capture that volume of water. So, and this will of course have implications even on energy generation, because right now we're able to use some of the hydro power at certain times of the year, and now that's going to be shifting. So, running out of time here. Talking about wildfire, traditionally in October is when we have the onset of the Santa Ana winds, and the Santa Ana wind conditions are caused by having a cold air mass over the Great Basin Desert that then drains out with a high pressure system over the Great Basin towards the ocean, and as it comes through mountain passes, it increases in speed and in intensity, and we do have these fires that are driven by Santa Ana winds. But what the climate scientists and what Dr. Hall is predicting is that we are now going to see the Santa Ana conditions change. There's actually going to be fewer Santa Ana winds in the future, and that our fire regime, because of the high temperatures, are actually going to change substantially. We are going to see more wildfires in the summer, like the station fire of a few years ago, will become more of the norm rather than the Santa Ana driven fires. And that will have to change the way that we manage things. When it comes to sea level rise, there are some interesting initial studies related to this that will be released shortly by our friends at USC. And we are looking at 10-year storms having significant potential damage. Even today, a 10-year storm in areas such as Venice and Wilmington. And there are some really important questions because we have 43% of America's import-exports are going out through the port of Los Angeles and the port of Long Beach, that the nation's supply chain depends on these, the nation's economy depends on these ports being able to operate well. And if there's any impact to port operations, that could be stunning for the US economy. So, I'm sorry I breezed through this because I want to get to the good news. I actually want to let you know that there's stuff we can do. So, love Al Gore. Love him. What a great hero. He really put this issue out in front, and he's done so many great things on the subject of climate change. However, there are really important studies that have been out there that show that some of the language that Mr. Gore and Mr. McKibben have been using really speaks to the third of us, gets to us. It doesn't get to that middle 30 to 40% that we need to persuade. And so rather than talking about polar bears, we have to talk about people in our own cities. And our theory of change, we have a theory of change in our organization, which is that if we make climate change relevant to people where they live, they will then persuade their policymakers to take action. Rather than argue the science globally, which is where it's been stuck now for a dozen years, instead we should talk about how we need to adapt, and how we not only need to adapt, we need to limit the damage. How do we go upstream to actually limit the damage? So our view is that we can actually make our city a better place in trying to adapt and limit the damage of climate change. We can get multiple benefits from one thing. So here are some of our campaigns, and I'd like to tell you about them. The first one is that right now, as I described, our rooftops in Los Angeles, that's 20% of the city's landmass. It adds, again, somewhere between 3 to like 23 degrees Fahrenheit to the temperatures inside of a home. By a simple passive technology, by having a more reflective rooftop, what you can do is cool down those homes. You're adapting, you're becoming more climate resilient in your own home, and at the same time, you're reducing the load on your refrigeration and on your air conditioning. You get 2 for 1. You're reducing your energy use. You get the benefit on having more money in your pocket that you're not paying out to your electric utility, and you're burning less fossil fuel to create the electricity. So, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power already has an incentive. Are some of the folks here not Santa Monica, but City of LA, some Venice? Yeah. So right now, when your house has to have a new roof, you can get an incentive that will take care of all incremental costs from a regular roof to becoming a cool roof. I'm sorry? There are many different methods of doing it, and some are longer lasting than simply paint. And so we are working to, and this is what our organization is going to do, we're going to mandate that any new rooftop built in Los Angeles is going to have to be a cool roof for a residential. Yeah. And because there's an incentive, I think the Building Industry Association that usually likes to go up and shoot down these types of things are going to support us. So I think we're going to be able to do this, but I'm going to need your help to go before LA City Council and to do this. We also have public health studies coming out that are going to really hit home on the virtues of these cool roofs. But you're in Santa Monica. So in Santa Monica and the rest of the state, we need to expand this incentive program. So I'm going to need your help when we go before the California Public Utilities Commission to be able to get the same incentive outside of the city of LA. And then when we have that, when we move the ordinance mandating these new rooftops, there's not going to be political opposition. We want to get this stuff off the ground. And I can talk a little bit more about this later if you want that. Now, number two, 40% of the landmass is asphalt. We have to do something about that. So there is a new coalition we helped start it called Streets for the Future. No major city in the United States is actually planning on embedding highly reflective material into the asphalt slurry. LA is going to be the first to do this. Now, right now there is a measure that is being put before the people of Los Angeles in being prepared for November of 2014, and it's called the Streets Bond Measure. And the idea is to fix potholes. That's what they want to do. Like, I don't like potholes, right? I ride a bike most of the time, but so I don't like potholes on a bicycle. It's kind of dangerous. But rather than get our streets back to the way they were in 1950, why don't we get streets to where they need to be in the year 2050? And so that's what we're trying to do. And we have a broad coalition, so it's not just cool streets. We have Lawrence Berkeley Labs working with the Bureau of Street Services. They're testing these materials right now. We want to make sure that these are really safe streets in addition, that doesn't make the streets slicker, and that when you recycle the material where they tear up the asphalt and they lay it back down, there are no problems with this added material. So we're going through a bunch of tests right now. But this is a campaign that will be on the ballot to fix our streets, and not only do it for cool streets, but complete streets, so it's more walkable and bicycle friendly, and green streets, so that when it rains, you're capturing that rainwater and you're able to use that. So that's very, very important, and I'm going to need your help coming up. The next one, this is big, and Senator Pavley mentioned this as well. Prop 39 is big. It's really big. It's $2.5 billion of money coming to schools in the state of California. But you know what they don't have? They don't have as an action to make them climate resilient. They say that they're going to make them more energy efficient. That's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But what we need to do, and it was just last Friday that they said they're not taking comments anymore. Guess what? If you write them today or tomorrow, they're going to accept your comments. I am asking you to send that to docket@energy.ca.gov and mention the docket number. And I would like for you to please tell them that you would like to see them add climate resiliency as one of the benefits. Because we have to stop spending money, our taxpayer money, on stuff that is not going to help us deal with climate change, right? It has to be integrated so we do the things at the same time. So what we're trying to do is build cool roofs so that we protect our students. And as I told you about playgrounds, did you know that in August, when the kids go back to school at LAUSD in the San Fernando Valley, those playgrounds are 150 degrees. They can't play on those playgrounds. The asphalt's sticking to their tennis shoes. It's not a good thing. So our idea is to convert those playgrounds. So I'm going to show you some images in a little while of what that looks like. Now, here's another, this is a no regret strategy that we believe you can enact right away. Not only take on the urban heat island effect, which will cool down LA in a way that our temperatures in the future will even be lower than they are today. That is a smart thing to do. But in addition to that is to have more local water projects, because pumping water up over the Tehachapi Mountains into Southern California, did you know that's the world's largest water lift? That one pumping station is 2% of all the electricity used in the state of California. When you go over the Grapevine, how do you think that beautiful lake got there, that Pyramid Lake? We pumped that up from the California Aqueduct over the mountain and down back into Southern California. So the more we can save water locally, the better. Reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And because of that, we need your help. When we come up to talk about recycled water, Santa Monica's in the lead on this, but we need your help in LA. On conservation, on cleaning up our aquifers, and there will be ballot measures that I'm going to talk about in a little while related to this. And this is part of our recycled water system in Southern California. From the Hyperion, right now, your sewage from the city of Santa Monica ties into the LA City sewage system. It goes out to the Hyperion water treatment facility. Every single day at Hyperion, next to LAX, you've driven past it, it smells a little funky. There's 350 million gallons of water goes out into Santa Monica Bay every day. This is the water that came in from the Wind River range of Wyoming down through the Green River into the Colorado River and then into Southern California, and we use it to flush the toilet and out it goes. From 900 miles away? Is this the right way to treat this? What instead we need to do is to recycle this water, and there are ways of doing that. So there are some very exciting opportunities to do that. Right now in LA, as I said, 89% of our water comes from imported sources. We need to increase that local amount, and they have projected for 2035 to get to 37% local water in the city of LA. And to tell you the truth, to get there is going to require bond measures and people willing to pay for it. So, this has to do with the grid. One of the other no-regret scenarios, and I'm going to breeze over this very quickly, you need electricity so that people who are most vulnerable have some air conditioning during heat waves. It's going to get hotter. Here in Santa Monica, you kind of don't need to worry about that. I live in downtown LA. I know how hot it gets, so I just want to let you know that we need to have a robust grid. If you have a really strong grid, then you can add more solar to it. But right now, our grid was built in the 1950s. We need to modernize it and have these microgrids. Microgrids, if you ever saw that picture after Hurricane Sandy of Manhattan and the whole place is dark except for one little light, that was NYU. They had a microgrid. They were off the grid. They can interact with the regular grid. That's what we need in Southern California to become more climate resilient. Need your help on public education. We need to reach more and more people to tell them about what they can do. Thank you. We need that. There's new studies that are coming out that give these opportunities for news blasts. There's a community-wide greenhouse gas inventory that's coming out of Los Angeles County. Juan Matute is one of the leaders in doing that. USC is coming out with a study on sea level rise and exactly where in Venice you have to worry and where in Venice you don't have to worry. They will tell you that's coming. On coastal fog, if you don't like June gloom, well, you're in trouble. And then soil moisture and stream flow, incredibly important when it comes to water supply, and our water supply from the Sierra Nevada. Dr. Hall is going to do a very comprehensive downscale study of the Sierra Nevada. When it comes to transportation, this is something that we have to walk the talk, as Senator Pavley said, taking our bike, walking more. This is like, I didn't want to say son or daughter of Measure R, so I called it the scion of Measure R. Thought I'd use a fancy word. But we're looking at a potential ballot measure that former Santa Monica Mayor Denny Zane is helping to pull together for November 2016. We're hoping that that goes through. A very important thing for social justice in Los Angeles is to make sure that when we have new stations across Southern California, that we're not displacing historic communities that live there. There is a way of having transit-oriented development that respects the neighborhoods by having more inclusionary housing in those areas. I'm sure Pam O'Connor could talk about 2 hours on this subject very easily. This is her thing. The local water investment, we are actually looking at also a new measure for local water in Southern California. We're working with RAND Corporation on a NOAA grant to really characterize what the water investment would look like here. There is a chance for a new ballot measure to do more local water supply in LA County and to clean up the water that goes into our oceans. You get it like a 2-for-1 multiple benefit deal. I know that Governor Brown wants to put a state water bond before voters. I don't know if that's going to happen. There is efforts to lower the requirement from 2/3 to have new revenue to 55% at the local level. And that's something that Assembly Member Bob Blumenfield, before he moved over to, now he's over at City Council, but when he was in the state, he put that ballot measure as a constitutional change. That's coming up. That there is tar sands oil that is being refined here in Southern California. I'm part of a statewide effort to address that. That still is, there's a lot of internal work on that. And as Senator Pavley pointed out, the oil companies are gunning for the low carbon fuel standard. We have to fight to preserve that. So what does all this look like? What does this look like? And I just want to point this out really quickly that, look, so here is the LA River today. Now, what does climate change materially look like if we do it right locally? That's not bad, right? That's meeting the challenge of climate change. All right, the LA River, look at what it can be. So rather than this eyesore, it becomes a place where you can use the local water, and rather than it just rushing out into the ocean, it could actually be of use. So I told you about these playgrounds. This is what is going on, but that's what it can become. This is meeting the challenge of climate change. This is what it looks like. Or an alley. Instead, it can become with permeable pavement so that you're able to capture the water. And so here's just a regular old home with turf grass. The Department of Water and Power is paying you $2 per square foot to tear up that grass and put in a drought-resistant lawn. Right now, you can get paid to do that. Oh, this is about a block away from where I live. There's like Figueroa Boulevard at LA Live. It's a big street, absorbing all that solar radiation and keeping it at the surface. And look at what it can become with a streetcar. Hey, I like the streetcar. The LA Times can go to hell. It's a wonderful product. And with trees, imagine if this was Figueroa Boulevard. What a grand boulevard that would be. And then this is further down towards USC, what it could look like. Or in Boyle Heights, right? This is just, again, all of this asphalt pavement that's out there. And instead, you can convert it to something. This is what it means to meet the climate challenge in Southern California. And then my friend Andy Lipkiss from Tree People, this is his project. I want to be really clear. Some of these slides are from Tree People, and we work very closely with them. But look at that pavement right now. What a mess that is, right? That's out in the valley. And look, they decided to tear up the asphalt. They put down ways of infiltrating and capturing the rainwater, and that's what it looks like now. This is what it means to meet the climate crisis. So I just want to thank you, and I really want to work with your organization on solutions.